Here we are. I think we're ready to go. I am Lauren Cadillac with Cadillac Law in Dallas, Texas, serving all of the state of Texas, but only the state of Texas. Welcome out there, YouTube land. I'm so glad for those of you who are joining me live. Thank you. For those who are watching this recorded, thank you. For those of you who are not seeing this, I'm not addressing you. Please look below, hit subscribe. There's a bell. If you click on that, it'll notify you when I do stuff. Also, if you could like, and if you have questions during the live stream, there should be a live feed for comments where you can ask your questions. I'm going to get through the presentation, and then when I'm done, I'll come to the questions. So let us get started. Now, I am getting better with the technology, but this is still one of my first few times, so please bear with me. Tonight, we're talking about property tax protests. I am the owner of Cadillac Law. We are a law firm that was established in 2013 specifically for the purpose of property tax protests. And then in 2016, went to serving the Oak Cliff and Dallas area full time. And our emphasis and practice is on real estate. This means we do a lot of probate. We work with investors. We work with contractors. We do estate planning. That includes aging planning. We obviously do property tax protests because that has to do with your real estate. We do those for commercial, residential, and also business personal property. So there's very little we don't do. One of those things is family law. I do not help people get divorced. But I know someone who does if you need a referral. All right, we are a woman-owned and operated firm, and this is my paralegal, Jamisha. These are her 5 beautiful children. These are my 2 children, and back before the COVID, you used to be able to see the kids at the office during the school year, or I'm sorry, the summer pretty often. So I myself, excuse me, and y'all know I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see anything. Okay, I myself went to Arizona State University for my undergrad, and I finished that in 2004. I then went on to obtain an MBA, and 9 days later I started law school, where I went to St. Mary's University in San Antonio. While I was at St. Mary's, AT&T gave me an internship in their procurement department, and I was negotiating contracts for them. It was a great fit for me, and they moved me up here to Dallas in 2001, right after I graduated law school. I studied for the bar, and I took the bar in 2001, and I passed on the first time. Woo woo! I started at Cadillac Law, like I just said, to help Oak Cliff and Dallas, and in particular, I started on property tax protests because that was something I actually did for the first time while I was in law school, and I was successful. I did it for myself, and I was very successful at it, so I decided that I could make a business of it. Most recently, in 2019, Cadillac Law was granted a contract to build and manage a title clearing program for the city of Dallas. That program is scheduled, and we are launching it next week. Yay! So be on the lookout for announcements and information about that. I am the single mother of 2, Noah and Liberty, whose pictures you saw in the previous slide. All right. So today we're going to go through the property tax cycle, why our taxes are so high, how does the county assess its value, homesteads, what can I do, and an example presentation. All right, so buckle up, we're in for a ride. So this is the property tax cycle. In this slide, you can see that January 1st is the day the districts are assessing your value. So they're not actually all at the office on January 1st crunching the value for every single property. That's not how it works. But they are assessing the value for that day. So that is the point in time that they're assessing the value. Now that is important when you're protesting particularly right now, because you are not going to be able to bring up quarantine, you're not going to be able to bring up COVID, anything like that, since that all began in January, February, March of 2020. They're making their assessment on the first day of January 1st, 2020. Then during the spring, pretty much, through the rest of the winter and the spring, they're making those appraisals and getting ready to send it out. And April and May typically is when they send you your values. And in fact, prior to COVID, our protests were due on May 15th. So this was supposed to be my last presentation of its sort this year, but I'm gonna go reschedule that because in Dallas, they are now due on June 15th. Other places, I'm not 100% sure when they're due. So my advice to you would be to get your intent to protest in as soon as possible. If you have to do it on your own today without hiring someone, do that. You want to make sure you're locking that in, and the sooner the better. You don't want to have to argue about that later. So by June 15th, we are going to have the values in, and then we are going to spend the next few months arguing about the values. And in October, the county will send out tax bills and the like, and you'll start having to pay, and I believe they're late after January 1st. So that's the property tax cycle in Texas. All right, why are my taxes so high? Well, growth is the number one reason. So I don't know how many of you folks took economics. I did. Apparently there's no such thing as a free lunch. However, I learned about supply and demand. So let's pretend my cell phone is the city of Dallas and the border. This is a whole city. Okay. Obviously Dallas has like weird little, but whatever, we're going to pretend it fits nicely into the cell phone. There is no space in these boundaries to build real estate. Sometimes there's lots somewhere. There's a lot here where you can buy and put a home, but there's no growth. Dallas has met its capacity. We have filled the boundaries of the city. And so that means that the supply is limited, and it's limited to what fits within the boundaries and what's already there. However, when we have companies like Toyota and other huge companies moving here, the demand is going to go way, way, way up, right? So our supply is limited, but our demand is my planner size, right? So that is going to make the value go up. It's called scarcity. Oh, I just remembered that. Oh, look at me knowing economics. So really there's the economics, and then there's the legislature. If you learn nothing this evening, except this, I will be happy. The legislature, elections are important because you vote here in Texas for our state legislature, for our local representatives and judges. And it is very important to vote for judges and not straight ticket vote, folks. Okay. Now, what has happened is Texas has elected a legislature that would rather dump the expenses onto the local counties and municipalities instead of paying them themselves. So where our state is making billions of dollars, where it was up until the oil thing, the state was making billions of dollars, and instead of contributing to our children's education and grandchildren and whoever, our fellow citizens' educations and those sort of things, the legislature has said, no, we're going to put that on the back of the people. So where 60% of education used to be paid by the state of Texas, it's now only 40. So I want you to think about that when you go vote, and I want you to think about who you're voting for, because that is a huge burden that is now just on our backs and shouldn't be. And then also, just as a reminder, they're assessing January 1st, so they're not going to take into mind any kind of COVID-19 issues. All right, so how does the county make the assessment? Well, firstly, I go every year in December to it's basically the continued education for the people who are the appraisers at the county and for their leadership. And I go to that. I've gone 2 years, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to go this year. I'm not sure what's going to happen this year. It's usually in December. And it is completely enlightening. And there I learn the language they use. I learn all kinds of wonderful things. So this information comes from having done this, but also kind of embedding myself with the appraisers and trying to learn what they are talking about. Okay, so in terms of commercial or rental property, so this could be residential rental and not just commercial rental. The county is going to look at two different things. One, an income method, and two, a comparison method. Okay, so what is income method? What is comparison method? Well, I think that's pretty straightforward, right? Income method is how much income the property is receiving or not. So you're going to want to show your rent rolls or lack thereof. And then you're going to assess, and this is kind of adding comparison, how your rent looks compared to other people. So that's going to be comparison. But just a straight rent roll, like here's the value because here's the income it brings. Then you can do the comparison, which is here's what my building brings, but my neighbor over here, they bring this, so I'm actually losing. My property's not as valuable. So that is an argument available as well. Additionally, with commercial property, you can do comparison and condition. So, my neighbor is renting at this, and it's really nice and remodeled, and my commercial property is, I can't. This is why I can't rent to people. No one will rent from me. It's awful. The whole thing you're doing in there is trying to look like you either want to look like a slumlord or like you live in filth. Okay, so people ask me, Lauren, should I go? Should I be there? I was like, you don't want to be there because I am going to make it sound like you live in squalor. That's my job. I want them to think you live in squalor. Okay, so this is the opposite of selling. With residential and homestead, they are going to use a residential homestead. Now you can use this with residential rental as well, but the residential homesteads, they are almost going to strictly do the comparison method. So a lot of folks, if you're like me, you live in a neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood, my house was built in 1930. And some of the other houses were too, and then they were built out throughout the 50s, and there's a couple lots that are empty or getting built on now. So in my neighborhood, they are going to compare, and what's happening in my neighborhood is folks are moving maybe to like a nursing home, or they're just not needing their real estate anymore. And so they're selling it, and someone comes in and they buy it at this low price, and then they gut it, and then they put like granite countertops and travertine tiles. That's still a thing. They're making it really, really nice and up to today 2020 standards. But the house I live in is like maybe 1930s standards. There's probably some 1960s standards in there, maybe a few 1980s standards flushed in there. But I've been here for 10 years and I haven't really done anything. So they are comparing my house, which is subpar, to these brand new flip, turnkey homes. And that's the comparison method. And to make matters worse, they use a retail-based valuation, which means if you list your property, let's say there's been a couple instances where I listed my property and it didn't sell. I went in and they literally used the language from the realtor's description in the MLS, okay? And when I first bought my own home, they used the language from the realtor as like remodeled kitchen. Well, luckily I had a photograph that showed, like, I don't even have GFCI outlets in my kitchen, so it can't be that new, can it? And repainting it is not upgrading it. And I have Formica countertops. So you can prove to them that your property should not be compared to these turnkey properties. But in order to do that, you have to take photographs. So you have to have photographs of the stuff that is going to be different than your neighbors. It's important to know that your the law actually requires them to assess you in a similar manner. You need to be taxed similarly to your neighbors. And one thing that they will try to do is they'll try to say that you're a neighbor to like a totally different neighborhood. So for me, I live in a part of Oak Cliff, and up over here is a golf course and a really fancy, nice area, $1 million homes. And then like down here is my neighborhood, and our houses are well under $300,000 in value. So what they'll do, I'll get in there and they'll use the comp. This is my house, hold on the angle, there we go. They'll use a comp from this neighborhood, and I will actually get them to pull up the map, and I will show them, and I will be like, this is a line of delineation. You can't compare me to this golf course neighborhood. That's not the kind of neighborhood I live in. But they try that stuff, and they try it all the time. So watch them. And don't be afraid to make them pull up the map and to show them specifically. Okay, so homestead. So many people are like, my tax has gone up. Do I have a homestead? How does homestead work in Texas? So your homestead exemption in property taxes, because homestead is actually like this theory regarding collecting on judgments, but homestead exemption is what we're talking about today. It can only be taken the first year you live in the home on January 1. So with my house, I was supposed to close in December, and I would have been able to have my homestead that first year, but there was some mix up and we ended up closing January 13th. So the whole first year I lived here, I did not get homestead. Well, what does the homestead do? The homestead creates a cap. Okay, so let's say you buy a house for $100,000, you lock in your homestead $100,000. The next year your house doubles in value. Congratulations, it's now worth $200,000. So the tax district, because you have a homestead, they are only going to be able to up you 10%. So you're only going to pay taxes on $110,000, even though your value is way up here. Okay, you're only going to pay at that 110 level. But then what's going to happen next year is your value was 200, and now your value comes in at 250, and you're going to be paying 220 because it's 10% over the last year's value. There's always a catch, guys. So that's part of the reason disputing your value and getting your value lowered is so important, because if it's started at 100, now it's at 200, if I can pull it down, let's say I get it down to 150, then next year when it goes up to 250, I only have to pay taxes on 165 because there's a 10% cap. So if you can kind of keep pulling it down, that will help stop the bleeding on the taxes. But understand, it is an exponential value. So it's this 10% limit on the tax. So it's the 10% on the value, and then you're paying. So it's not as great as it is chopped up to be. Okay, so the other exemption we're going to discuss tonight, the only other exemption we're going to discuss tonight, is the 65 plus. And I just want to tell you, there are multiple exemptions. We will get into that on the next slide. I'm only discussing the two here, okay? So the 65 plus exemption, that locks you into the value. I need to change this word, I should say value, when you turn 65. Now your value can go down after you're 65. So let's say you turn 65 in a year that value was at 200,000. And then something happens, the market crashes, the value's down to 100,000. Well, your 65 means that you're only going to pay on the 200,000. Okay, so if the market was really good the year after you turned 65 and the value went up to 300, you were stuck down at the 200, thank goodness. But if the market crashed and went down to 100, the 65 doesn't help you, right? So the 65 doesn't do anything, and you would want to dispute it to get it to come down. They being the government, being the CAD, saying they will say, oh, well, you're 65, you don't need to protest your value. That is a blatant lie. If your value is lower than what your value is locked at for your 65 exemption, you want to protest your value, period. So be aware of that. A lot of times they being the government and the CAD, don't fully understand these concepts, and so they'll tell you the incorrect information. So you always want to run it by a lawyer. All right, so what can I do to stop the bleeding? First and foremost is make sure you have all your exemptions. There's homestead, there's 65 plus, there's veterans, there's spouses of veterans, there's all kinds of exemptions that are available out there. Now, most people who are like me, middle-aged, working, raising children, I'm getting the homestead and that's it, right? And also I'm only getting head of household on my income taxes. So it's just where I am in life. But if things happen or I become disabled or one of my children becomes disabled, there might be additional options for exemptions out there. So you just want to make sure that whatever exemptions you can get, you do get. What else can you do? Protest, protest, protest. So you're going to use surrounding homes who are showing a lower taxable value. So the way I look at this is I actually create a spreadsheet, and I only use comps that are on the same street as my client, because that whole map thing, the law says you have to be taxed as your neighbors. Well, if this person's on my street, that's my neighbor, okay? But if it's some other, they'll say, neighborhood that you're in over here, who cares, right? So what I do is I create a spreadsheet, I put in the valuation, here's the street address, here's the value, divide by the square feet, here's value per square feet. As long as their value is less than mine on the per square feet, I'm using that. If it's greater than mine, I'm hiding it. No, just ignoring it. And then the other one is condition of your property. And I'm going to get into in a moment what an example presentation that I do for the CAD looks like, and we'll get into condition and what they're looking for in there. And finally, you can hire professionals. So prior to COVID, I used to tell people, go in, do your informal, see if you can get it lowered on your own. If you can't, then call me and hire me. Well, they're not doing informals that way this year. So if you want to try it on your own, I suggest you do it through the internet and send your supporting information, see what they get, what they come back with. And if you're not satisfied, then call me. But if you're a person like me, you've got enough going on, there's really no need to try to add a new skill to the skill set. You can hire me from the jump. But I do suggest you hire a professional, because we've been doing this and we know how to make these arguments. And like I told you, I personally go to their continued education every year so I can learn what they're saying. All right, so here we go. We're going to get into this example presentation. I always start with a front page like this. I learned really early on that the CAD loves a proposed value. Now on this one, I just used a fake address. I put in the address, I put DCAD's value, and then I put my proposed value. You can see here, my proposed value is what, 54,000 in their value. It's a negotiation, okay? So I'm gonna go in with the lowest value that I can support. I'm gonna find the house that is the lowest price per square foot in my neighborhood, my actual neighborhood, okay? And I'm going to use that. This is a negotiation, so I'm starting as low as possible. And this plants the seed, oh, we're really off on this, oh. Okay, so I always start my pages this is my front page, and I always start with the proposed value. I then move into I try to open with a front picture of the house. When I tell you these folks love pictures, I can't emphasize to you enough that they love pictures. So I started with this one. This is actually my home, and at the time I needed a new roof. So I have these missing shingles here, right? And I call it out, note the missing shingles. They love pictures. So here, this one is fun. This is actually my oven, And on January 1st of that year, my oven was not regulating temperature. It just like stopped working. I don't really understand what was wrong with it. So I took a picture of my broken oven and I wrote here, oven does not regulate temperature. Can y'all see the lack of temperature regulation? Can you see anything wrong with this oven? No, you sure can't, but they want pictures. You have to have pictures, okay? Here's another example. This dishwasher was also mine and has also since been replaced. And you could see, okay, so it's missing the panel down here, right? And that's kind of ugly. But at the time, and there's no way to show this in photographs, the thing did not, and I repeat, did not clean dishes. Okay, it was so bad. They were so, ugh. So I bought a new one. I make note of that. Does not wash dishes. It's true, it's broken. It's weird in my mind that I have to do that, but hey, if they need a visual reference, I'll give them one. I can take a picture of my oven, that's no problem. Or dishwasher, or whatever it might be. All right, so here you can see this door is damaged, you know, it needs repairs, so there's a picture of it. Now here is an example of the comps that I do. So you notice they're all on the same road. You'll notice that I do square feet, here's the value the county gave them, and then I divide that price per square foot. So here we have 282 and 290. The actual neighbors are being taxed at so much less. Their value is 282 to 290 a foot, and the client's is 430. So that is a very compelling comp. Those are very compelling. That is not taxing me like my neighbor. That's double taxation. So that is when I'm going to use those type of comps. All right, what I don't show on here is a sex offender screen. What I do is I take every address and I go to the sex offender database and I get a map and I cut it out and I put it in there and I say, oh, there's sex offenders nearby. Can I tell you specifically what that does? No, I don't know like dollar amount, what that equates to, but I can tell you it's effective. When you have a map with a ton of red dots and all those dots mean sex offenders, it's kind of, it works. All right, so when you decide to hire Cadillac Law to help you with your property tax protest, we will send you an email with your forms. You will sign them and send them back to us. You will then take pictures and collect estimates, which you'll upload to our software called MyCase. We will then create a presentation that includes that evidence as well as comps and sex offenders and anything else we can find to support our argument. And we will present that to the board to get a reduction and finally email you the results. All right, so here we get to questions and answers. And I had something pop in my mind, which I can't remember. I'm sorry, guys. So let me see if there are any questions in the columns. Okay, there are questions, and don't have my glasses. Let me read this. How do vacant houses affect your appraisal? I have one behind me and one, two doors in. Oh, okay. Timmy, I'm starting with you. Very good. Sorry about having to see my face all close to the screen. So there have been times where I have been able to, for instance, I had a client whose house was like immaculate and there were no issues, but the neighbor had inherited the house and he had let it overgrow and it basically was like a jungle and there were feral cats. And so I had them take pictures of that and I presented that, and that actually worked because it was gross. It was like a jungle. And if someone went to buy her house, that client's house, they would want to pay less because of the nuisance. So what I do on that one, Timmy, if I was you, I would take pictures of those empty houses, or maybe do like a Google map and circle them and show the proximity to your house. If you could find a day where one of the squatters is there and get like a picture of the squatter, I know you didn't say you have squatters, but usually that's the case, then that would be even better. Especially if they're close to you. So that's a really good question, and I hope I answered it. Natalie, the MLS is the multiple listing service. That is where realtors put properties to sell to other people. Oh, it looks like Timmy got that. Okay. Natalie, you will not know when it is accepted. You will just have to keep checking the DCAD website and click on, you go to your actual property and then click on exemptions and see if you see it in there. And where can I locate? You can locate the neighbor's property information, tax information in DCAD as well. What I usually do is like a search. So if your address was 1001 Smith Street, I would do a search between like 1 and 2000 Smith Street and look for the best values to my eye that pop up. And it will show you a list. They're very short lists, and the DCAD website and database is not great. I mean, it's government run, so there's really no budget for it. But you can find them there. It is a little bit of like a manual process, but it is well worth the effort. Okay, you purchased your home not knowing it was across the street from an event venue. Oh, that's fun. How can you prove that? I think the only way to prove the event venue is through a map, and I would just take like a Google map or something, a screenshot where that they could see the building, and then in the slide or however you're going to present the information, you can like elaborate on that. But they like pictures, right? So if you can find like a map, or I mean, even if you took a photo when there was an event there, that could help too. Pretty much everyone understands that there's going to be noise concerns when there's an event venue. Do I use a specific site? No, I don't actually go get crime sites. Stats. I only get sex offender stats, and I think it's called nationalwatchdog.org, but I can't remember. And I've never been interested in crime stats, so I actually don't know where you would find those. I don't know that crime, I mean, it would help your argument, and it definitely can help go to a you don't want to live here type thing. So especially if you live in an area that is like a stereotypical crime area, so like Oak Cliff, I do well saying, oh, this is very dangerous, even though like I live in Oak Cliff and it's not dangerous at all. Hold on, we bought our home from a hack flipper. Oh yeah, Timmy, I'm sorry it's too late, but never buy a house from a flipper. It's like buying a car from a rental car company. You don't want to do it. Do I need to cite building code if it's obviously wrong? I don't know that you want to cite the code as much as you want a picture showing how wrong it is. Or an estimate of how to fix it. Estimates are the best because if you have an estimate, that's just an automatic reduction. So for instance, I have a friend and his roof was damaged in October of 19. So on January 1st, 2020, there was about $50,000 worth of roof damage. That is an automatic $50,000 right off the value off the top. So estimates to me are absolutely the best thing. Oh, you know what? I just had to get some new windows. I'm going to show them that. So yeah, get your estimates, get receipts, anything that was not repaired on January 1st. So your estimate can be from now, like you can go get your plumber or electrician to come estimate the fix on it today, and that's fine as long as on January 1st that fix was required. Okay, do we have any other questions? I thank you so much for attending. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, you hit like. Your comments are awesome and excellent. And if you come up with questions or anything afterwards, I am checking the comments. So if you think of something or you have additional questions, I will answer those for you in the comments. And also, if you need a consultation, you can give us a call at 972-845-1200. Natalie, I have not used news reports or articles, but I absolutely would. I will use any evidence that I can. So but you have to present it to them. So you're not going to be able to like show the full article. You're going to want to find something with like a good headline where you can just cut the first page of it or something and then summarize to them what is in the article. Okay, again, if you want to call the office, it's 972-845-1200. Timmy, I thank you for saying I'm awesome. It's a little weird because I can see myself on the screen right now and I feel like I talk with my hands too much. I hope y'all have enjoyed this tonight. I hope you've learned something, and I hope that you share this with your friends. Have a wonderful evening, and we will talk again soon.